out of my club. That's a shout you'll often hear on Twitter, and also amongst the more toxic terraces in the Premier League grounds, or any ground really. In this video, we're going to tell you exactly which players need to leave every single Premier League club. Not only that, we're going to put forward a suggested club for each player. Now, keep calm on this one. I welcome engagement, it's good for the video. In fact, we're actually getting very close to 250,000 subscribers, and if you'd like to be the difference, do you want to be the difference? Would you like to be the difference? You can be, if you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. But know this, it's about putting forward someone that you can get a bit of money for. Maybe it's time for him to leave, maybe it's good for the player, maybe it's good for all parties. Not just who's the worst player who has to go. Let's begin. And we do begin with a belter of an example of what I've just spoken about. Emile Smith-Rowe. I did a video on Mudryk signing for Arsenal and how he would fit in. And actually, in that video, I spoke about how this probably means that Emile Smith-Rowe will be leaving the club. Of course, they went on to sign Trossard, and probably similar kind of things happened here. But yeah, you never saw that video. But anyway, Emile Smith-Rowe is my first pick. Not a bad player, wonderful player, 22 years old. Has had problems with injuries, sure. I'm going to slap on a market value of 32 million, and I'm going to suggest that he goes to Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund, maybe Julian Brandt makes a move. Speaking of which, there is a video where I'm talking about one transfer for every single Premier League team as well. That video is out right now. Go watch that video. Julian Brandt is in there. Spoiler alert. I won't tell you the team, though. But if he was to move on, you could imagine, I think Emile Smith-Rowe could go there, play, develop. I think he's a very smart man. And look, he's only made 12 appearances in the Premier League for Arsenal this season and only played 5% of Arsenal's total match minutes. A lot of this is down to injury, as I said, of course, but I feel like with the direction that Arsenal are heading under Arteta and how they want to move towards regular title challenges, I feel like shifting players who aren't as reliable will be something that they look to do. Even if you disagree with it, I know there's an affinity for him between him and the club and the supporters due to him being like Hail and Boyle and all that stuff. And he was, of course, given that number 10 shirt as well. But what Arteta has shown so far is that he is ruthless when it comes to these decisions like this. And I think it might be one that hurts him as well. And if you want that cash to go and buy those A-star quality players, then he is an asset that can be sold for a solid chunk of change. Is he a guaranteed starter at Borussia Dortmund? Maybe not. So I think there's another few options. I was thinking maybe Brentford as they look to evolve, to have a bit more of a sort of a nicer on the eye style of football, but they've already got someone like Damsgaard, but that kind of proves that they're not afraid to go for players that have got a bit of a bad injury record. Crystal Palace could be a really good shout as well, surrounded by a lot of technical players, maybe someone who's going to put that work rate in as well, but be an attacking player. Palace would be a really good shout as well. I think they would be suitors, and I think you'd get some good cash. Aston Villa, Bertrand Traore, market value is 12 million. Suggested club, Luton. His contract expiry is 2024. And whilst I think Bertrand Traore has something to offer at a Premier League club and could provide some depth in Europe for Villa this season, I think that Villa may have outgrown him and are going to be pretty ambitious this summer. And Traore will be one of the casualties from this, in my opinion. He played 8 times for Villa over the season after returning from Turkey in January. He didn't do much, but he did score in back-to-back games against Leicester and Forest, with the goal against Leicester being an 87th-minute winner. So there's definitely a player there. But with his contract expiring next year, it feels unlikely that Villa want to keep him, and perhaps a move to a newly promoted club like Luton, it could be something that benefits him and puts him in the shop window for another move after that. You know, he gets to be important. He could play as a shadow striker with the ability to roam to the right next to Carlton Morris, and I think his pace fits well with how they would play. Bournemouth. I don't like saying this, but it is the smart move, in my opinion. Kiefer Moore. Now, Kiefer Moore, market value, 3.4 million. Suggested club, Everton. Now, I think they're linked with Wout Weghorst. I heard that today. And this is kind of a similar kind of vibe, isn't it? Especially with Sean Dyche and how you want to play. His contract expiry is 2025. Now, Moore has been used mostly as a plan B striker this season, with Bournemouth's initial game plan being to play with dynamic, pacey forwards to play on the break. I think Kiefer Moore definitely has a place in the squad with what he offers. However, I think that selling him to bring in a younger face would be a smart move for Bournemouth. I think with him being 30 now, this is the last year that they could really secure somewhat of a fee for him. And selling players at the right time and maximising income revenue is key for a club like Bournemouth to be sustainable in the Premier League. And I think a club like Everton would likely take a gamble on him and probably pay around $5 million for him, which is more than what Bournemouth paid for him. So you're up. I know it's not a huge amount of money, but I think it's a good shout. Brentford, David Raya. Feels like the obvious choice. That's because it is the obvious choice. His market value is 25 million right now. His contract expiry is in 2024. And I think there's loads of suitors here. Man United is a good fit. Chelsea's a good fit. Spurs is a good fit. Can he deal with the pressure? He's not really had to do that because he's been at sort of an underdog at Brentford. So maybe someone like Spurs would be the best fit for him. I think Lloris is done. I mean, with De Gea, it's one of those ones, you know, at least he's been there and done it. It looks like he's going to stay there, but they're looking for competition. So they might want David Raya there, someone who's maybe a bit better on the ball. His passing is very, very impressive. He's been one of the best goalies in the league this year. So the time is now. Brighton, Aaron Connolly, market value 3.4 million. Suggested club, Sunderland. His contract expires in 2024. Aaron Connolly is one of those players where you think he'll eventually come good. He certainly did on my Football Manager series years ago now, but you know, banged in the goals. But the thing with him, and it was with me back in the day with the Rangers, is that he has now had 4 loan spells, none of which where he's set the world alight. Of course, he did in that Football Manager series. Remember? Some of you do. I see you. Now, sometimes, though, a player who leaves on a permanent actually then rediscovers themselves and reignites their career because you have a proper home now. And I think Connolly fits the bill in this sense. He's not going to get near the Brighton first team. And a championship move feels likely. Going to a team that scores goals is also important, and I feel like Sunderland could be a good option for him, especially with Joe Gelhardt returning to Leeds after his loan spell. Burnley. Jack Cork, market value 850k, suggested club. Watford, his contract again expires in 2024, and that's, I think, an important thing with these things. If you want to get a bit of money from some of these guys, if they've got a year left, that's the time to do it. Jack Cork featured 39 times, 26 starts for Burnley last season, and was one of the players that survived during the overhaul of the squad last summer. And whilst he was important in their promotion and fitted into Company's tactical approach, well, I think he's going to be a player that's likely going to be replaced, I think, this summer as Company moves this squad into a more youthful direction. Chelsea. 1 year in, 1 year out. Off you go, Kalidou Koulibaly. Market value is 21 million. Think you can get that from anyone? This is the problem with Chelsea spending. All the money is in the Premier League. So to get tasty sums back is going to be difficult. One club that might be able to do it, and I think the obvious place for him to go back to, is Serie A. Maybe Inter Milan would be the suggested club here. His contract expires in 2026 with an option of an extra year. I don't think they'll go for that one, if I'm honest. Especially at 32, I can't see Koulibaly undergoing a transformation next season either and becoming one of Chelsea's best defenders. You never know. You know, maybe he could be a bit of an Alderweireld. I just don't think he's got the legs anymore, to be honest. But I think with the young talent that they have coming through at centre-back, I think Chelsea should cut their losses and allow the likes of Colwill and Fofana to be the priorities, as this should be the priority over the long term. And Inter Milan, I feel like a good destination for him, as they're going to lose Skriniar on a free transfer this summer, and Koulibaly's stock in Italy is still high enough to tempt a team like Inter to go and sign him and give a bit of moolah. Or what's it called? Lira over. Cultured. The Palace made of crystal. Jean-Philippe Mateta. He is the person we're going to put forward here in terms of a player that needs to go. Market value, 7.75 million. Suggested club, Borussia Mönchengladbach. That's right. Off you go to Germany, please, Jean. His contract expires in 2026, and there aren't a lot to choose from when it comes to Palace, because most of the players that you'd get rid of have contracts expiring this summer. So if I've got to choose, and I do, because that's the format of the video, I think it's going to be Mateta. Whilst he's shown some flashes this season, and for those Palace fans who remember my tweet about Jordan Ayew, this is probably the best thing that's ever happened to you guys, because he's probably going to stay and score 35 goals next season, because it's what I do. And hopefully he does do that. And he has shown those flashes, as I said, but I don't think he has the natural finishing ability needed to succeed in the Premier League. He's only got 2 goals this season, and I feel like he should be doing much better with how much creative talent he has around him. Palace signed him from Mainz, and he was doing a bit better in Germany than he is in the Premier League, scoring 7 goals in the first half of the 2020-21 season before moving to Palace. So with Marcus Thuram leaving Mönchengladbach, Mateta may be an option that they look for as that physical striker. Everton, DAndre Gray. This might surprise a few. Market value, 70 million. Suggested club, West Ham, I'm going to go for. His contract expires in 2024 with an option of an extra year. DAndre Gray is probably one of Everton's better players. So again, as I said at the start of the video, this might be one that people get annoyed about. But I think because of Sean Dyche's system, it just doesn't exactly fit him. I can't see much point of him being there if he's not going to be utilised in a role that suits him best, and if he's not going to be a starter, he's just wasting his career, and you're wasting an asset, Everton, where you could kind of sell him and maybe get 2 players that suit the Sean Dyche style a little bit more. He scored 4 goals over the season, including a wonder goal against Man City. Everton also need to get some cash from somewhere, and selling someone who has high stock in the league, who simultaneously doesn't start, feels like the smart move. Someone like West Ham, I think, might be interested in him, with his pace and counter-attacking threat that he offers, and for what feels like probably a cheap fee in terms of the quality he can bring. Fulham, Tyrese Francois, market value 400k, suggested club Blackburn Rovers in the Championship. Contract expires in 2024, and it's never really clicked for Francois at Fulham. And with them being promoted to the Premier League last season, it meant that the pathway into the first team, it was somewhat blocked, meaning he was loaned out this season. But I think that the 22-year-old could still become a really solid midfielder because of that technical quality that he has and mobility on the pitch. And Blackburn could be a good fit for him, as they've just lost Tyler Morton, who has just returned to Liverpool after an impressive loan spell. And Francois could be a player that fills that hole for them. Liverpool. Okay. This kind of breaks my heart a little bit, and I imagine it will break Liverpool fans' hearts as well. Joe Gomez. Market value, 25 million. Suggested club, Aston Villa. Contract expires in 2027. But again, it's about doing good business here. And Gomez, he hasn't been great this season, if we're being honest. He made 3 errors this season and he's looked uncomfortable on the ball, or when Liverpool play a high line. Just he's not at that same mental state. And I hate to say that. And I think he could return to that. I think he's one hell of a player, which makes him a great asset to sell. But I think at Liverpool, he is one of those players where it feels like he needs a new start and it's not going to click at Liverpool long term. As I say, it doesn't mean that he's a bad player. It just means that he's not suited to the style of play at Liverpool, which is why they may look to sell him. He's not a guaranteed starter under Klopp, and at 26, he may fancy becoming a first-team regular to improve his England chances. Because again, this is the level that we're talking about. He is good enough for England, but he needs that freshness, I think. And I think a move would just be brilliant. He needs to feel valuable. I'm not sure he totally does. He does on a sort of certain level with Klopp, but he's not that important. And that's a problem, I think, for him. With him being a homegrown player and at a good age, he could command a good fee for Liverpool too. I think a club like Aston Villa feels perfect for Gomez because they play a low to mid block. And with what Emery has done with Mings and Konsa, it lends towards the idea that Gomez could be a great fit. Luton. Again, screams incoming. Elijah Adebayo. Market value 5 million. Suggested club Leeds United. His contract expires in 2024. Adebayo wouldn't be the first player I chose for Luton. Initially, I wanted to go for Cauley Woodrow or Fred Onyedema because I think that there would be championship interest that could generate some decent funds for the club. However, their contract situations aren't clear as to whether they're going to be there next season or not. So therefore, I've gone for Adebayo. I mean, he was great in the playoff final and is always a handful, but my problem is that I'm not sure how effective he can be in the Premier League with the pace of the league and how different the tempo is. He scored 7 goals last season and I don't think he'd thrive in the Prem. Having said this, a team like Leeds, who probably need a striker, may be willing to pay over the odds for him, which would allow Luton to upgrade in that position. Man City. Now, Pep Guardiola has those ruthless moments. Players have to be moved on at some point, even if they are iconic. And this guy is outrageously underrated, I would say. He is a Premier League great. Yet it could be time for that ruthless nature to kick in for Pep, and Riyad Mahrez might be on his way. Now, there's the obvious one of Cancelo. So I was you could chuck that in. Happy to chuck that in. I think he will be moved on, obviously. But for a more sort of juicy, debatable one, let me know, Man City fans, how you feel about this. Market value 26 million. Suggested club here, PSG. I think Riyad Mahrez would quite like this one. His contract expires in 2025. And with Mahrez now 32 years old, it feels like Man City may look to offload him to bring in a fresh face or two. Despite having a great season and registering 15 goal contributions in the Premier League alone, alongside 8 goals scored in the FA Cup and the Champions League. He's always scored so many goals in the Champions League, by the way. I still think City may sell him this summer. Pep has showed that he's a manager that gets rid of players at the right time, and Mahrez could be one of the players offloaded by Man City this summer. Man United, Scott McTominay. We did a video on this, looking at the next 3 transfer windows for Man United. Go check that one out if you haven't watched it yet. Be interested to see how it's aged, because it was about a month ago, and there might be some players that have moved on, but we might have got some right as well. Scott McTominay was definitely a player that we were talking about then in terms of bringing in money for Man United. His market value is 21.5 million. Suggested club, Newcastle United, we're going to go with. His contract expires in 2025. He's got the option of an extra year. And as we speak about in that video, there are a few that we could put forward, such as Maguire, Wan-Bissaka and Dean Henderson. But I think McTominay is a good shout because of Man United's current FFP tightrope. To sign players this summer, they need to generate some incoming revenue through the means of selling players. And McTominay is a good shout for this because he's homegrown, 26 years old, and has a good standing in the Premier League. Generally, this means that a club like Newcastle may spend upwards of 30 million on him, which would be a huge boost to Man United's summer transfer kitty. And I do so much bloody content. I think I also said, it's either in the one transfer video or the one I did on Saturday Social on Sky, we said McTominay at West Ham would be a good fit as well. So maybe West Ham as well to replace Declan Rice. Newcastle United, Ryan Fraser, market value 6.8 million. Suggested club, Glasgow Rangers. His contract expires in 2025. Fraser only started 3 matches for Newcastle in the Premier League over the season, and I think that Newcastle don't have much of a need for him anymore, despite him being a good signing when he joined initially. I think a move back to Scotland could be something that may be on the cards. Fraser came through at Aberdeen, but I think a transfer to Rangers is the most realistic option, and whilst Rangers don't play a system with wingers, they do still use them. For example, Rabbi Matondo has started matches up front on paper, but has had the freedom to move to the wide areas when he wants. With a market value of 6.8 million and being 29, Rangers could possibly get him for around 4 million. Also, there's been lots in the press about Eddie Howe and Ryan Fraser having a bit of a bust-up, a clash, him having to train with the under-21, so looks like an obvious time to depart. Nottingham Forest, Emmanuel Dennis, market value 8.6 million on transfer market. Suggested club, Leicester City, contract expires in 2026. When Forest went on a shopping spree last summer, I thought Emmanuel Dennis was one of those who would work out, but because of the constant rotation within the squad, he's never really found his place or settled at the club, it seems, certainly on the pitch. With Forest's preferred front 3 of Gibbs-White, Awani and Johnson, it looks like he'll be a bench player again next season, and that is unless they, of course, sell him, and I think he is a very much a sellable asset. He's got a decent amount of time left on his deal and could probably command a decent fee, you know. I think Leicester City could be interested in him as a Harvey Barnes replacement, maybe. Dennis is a player who's way too good for the Championship, but due to the size of Leicester City, they may be able to get him on board. Sheffield United, I'm going to go for Rhian Brewster, and not just so I can say this line that Barry Bannon said.
Rhian Brewster, you're absolutely honking, son.
His market value is 3.4 million. Wow, what a drop-off. Suggested club, Swansea. Go home, maybe. That's not his home, but he did well there, didn't he? His contract expires in 2025. Rhian Brewster, you are honking, son. Rhian Brewster is a player I don't think Sheffield United should take with them to the Premier League. He only made 16 starts in the Championship and only scored 1 goal, and I don't think he'll offer much in the Prem either. Something seems to have gone wrong there. Maybe it's just the wrong club and he needs to start again, and I think a move to Swansea is the best option. He won't cost too much, and Swansea is the only club he's truly shone at, so a move back might reignite his career. Tottenham Hotspur, there's quite a few that are probably going to be shown the door, but Davinson Sanchez, it is time enough. Market value 17 million. I'm not sure I'd pay that, but anyway, AS Roma is the suggested club. I think, toddle off to Serie A. Maybe you enjoy yourself. I like his attitude. The sort of the output's just not really been there, certainly not consistently. His contract expires in 2024. Sanchez has been double subbed and booed off this season at Spurs, and this doesn't bode well for his future at the club, and I don't think that he will be too keen on staying at the club if he has offers elsewhere. Spurs need a complete overhaul, in particular on their defence, ideally, and selling Sanchez could bring in funds for a replacement. I think AS Roma could be a good fit for him. Sanchez made 54 appearances under Mourinho when he was at Spurs, and playing in Serie A would probably suit him and his game. West Ham, Gianluca Scamacca the attacker, or if you're Michail Antonio, a slacker. Market value 23 million, really hasn't worked. I thought it would. I did videos saying it would. I look like a chump, Gianluca. But where could he go and where could it work? I think there's a player in here. So I'm going to say Brighton. What? Ooh, yes. Of course, he only arrived a year ago. His contract expires in 2027. And with Scamacca not settling at West Ham and their playstyle not suiting him, it could mean one of two things. Either West Ham alter their style of play to work around him, or they get rid of Scamacca whilst his stock is still high. Whatever they do, they need to make a decision this summer and go full throttle either way. And with Antonio's comments solidifying the belief that he doesn't quite suit West Ham, it may open the door for a move away. I think Scamacca could be a great rotation option at Brighton with Evan Ferguson, especially with Europe on the horizon. We've got to remember that. Scamacca suits Brighton 10 times more than West Ham, and it could be somewhere that he absolutely thrives. There's definitely a quality play in there. It's worth noting that he was at Sassuolo whilst De Zerbi was the manager, so keep an eye on this one. I think people won't expect it, but it could definitely happen. And finally, Wolves. Raul Jimenez, market value 7.75 million. Suggested club America? America. Well, actually, it's Mexico, isn't it? Contract expires in 2024. Wolves need a striker this summer, but importantly, they need, and no, you're getting rid of a striker to get a striker, but they need to gather as much funds as possible to be able to get one. Looks like they'll sell Ruben Neves, but I also think they should cash in on Jimenez. He's 32 now and hasn't been very useful this season, but this is a guy that is absolutely loved in Mexico, and I'm sure that most of the Mexican teams would be interested in signing him. I think Club America would have the most interest because of him being one of their previous players. So there you have it, guys. Do me a favour, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's get ourselves to 250k and check out one transfer every club needs to sign, which is here. So here are transfers that each of the Premier League teams for the 2023-24 season have to complete this summer, or should at the very least. Let's go.